Wake up. Are you hungry at all? What is going on? Was I thoroughly entertained? Yes. It was like, would I go back and tell myself like, you should definitely start this series right now? My current reads are really doing it for me. I'm really having a good time with them. Hi, let's talk about some of the books that I've read so far in September. Specifically, I want to talk about the 2 physical books I've read so far. The first one being Fernanda Melchor, Aquí no es Miami, or This is Not Miami. This is by Mexican journalist and author Fernanda Melchor, and it was written originally in Spanish, but it has been translated into different languages. There's an English translation available, but I read the Spanish one because I just like to challenge myself to read in Spanish when books are written originally in Spanish, because I just feel like it adds like a richness to the original text that is kind of lost when it gets translated into another language, although I'm very thankful for translations and think they're super important. And for all other translated novels, I will read them in English because I don't speak or read any other language other than Spanish. But for Spanish, I just love reading in its original language, and especially an author like Fernanda Melchor, whose writing is like so rich and descriptive, and she's Mexican, so a lot of like the specific colloquialisms that she uses and like Mexicanisms are very specific to Mexico and to Veracruz, where Fernanda's from, and I just really enjoy those details. So Aquí no es Miami, or This is Not Miami, is a collection of short stories. They are nonfiction, but it's not told in like a traditional nonfiction style of journalism. It is told in the style of relatos, and as Fernanda describes it, these are basically chronicles. So they're stories that are based on things that really happened, but they're told in a way that doesn't center specifically like all the facts and details and specificity of, let's say, like a news story. They center on like the feelings and the emotions surrounding it. So it's really following like the art of oral storytelling. So it kind of reads as if somebody was telling you something that happened to them, or like something that they heard from their neighbor or like a friend of a friend. So it includes like asides, and the narrative is not always structured like chronologically or in a way that is super straightforward, but it's very true to like the time and place of the story. And specifically, Fernanda Melchor's stories always take place in Veracruz, which is where she's from. I have read Hurricane Season, one of her novels, and that one is like one cohesive novel. This one, like I said, it's a collection of different stories, all taking place in different parts of Veracruz, and they're all different, but a lot of the central themes of this collection are poverty, violence, narco culture, and how drugs and the war on drugs and narco criminal organizations have affected the day-to-day lives of people who live in Veracruz. This collection was published in 2013, but in the intro, Fernanda says that all the stories within the collection were written between 2002 and 2011, I believe. And this was kind of the time period in Mexico during the height of the war on the narcos. This felt very similar in like themes and mood as hurricane season, but that one was a little darker, I feel like. And although most of the themes in this and like the things that happen in the stories that Fernanda is telling us, they are pretty graphic and violent in a lot of cases and dark generally, I feel like the writing style gives us a little more room to breathe, and there's like a little bit more levity in this collection than in hurricane season. Hurricane season was just like gut punch after gut punch, and it was like, ooh, it really made me feel like overwhelmed and like heavy. And this one, although it's dark and real, it's a little less heavy than hurricane season, which is interesting because these are nonfiction stories. But I think maybe because hurricane season is fictional, Fernanda was just able to like dig deep into a well of like violence and hurt and depravity in a way that's a little different when you're talking about real things that happened. This, in a lot of ways, reminded me, earlier this year, I read Medea me cantó un corrido by Dalia de la Cerda, and that is also a short story collection. Dalia de la Cerda is also a Mexican woman, and the theme of all of those stories is also like narco violence, the militarization of Mexico, and like what the people that are in the middle of it all, who aren't necessarily directly related to the gang violence and the drugs being trafficked, how they are affected by it in one way or another, whether they want to or not, just by proximity. That can be seen a lot in this book as well. This was a quick read. It has probably like 12 to 15 stories. They're all very quick, but they're all really good. Sometimes short story collections don't work quite well for me, but I think the fact that this was short and the fact that it was nonfiction really helped. It just kept me intrigued, and like Fernanda's writing is just so good. I really enjoy it, and I like that she talks about things that are close to her, close to home, and really highlights a region in Mexico that is not often talked about. Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to reading more of Fernanda Melchor's writing. Now, the other book that I read this month in physical form was also one written by a Mexican writer, and I also read it in its original Spanish, and that was Laura Esquivel's Like Water for Chocolate, Como Agua para Chocolate. This is a novel that I have heard a lot of things about. It's quite popular. It's I feel like one of the most popular Mexican novels to be widely and like internationally popularized and successful. I believe there's several movies that have been made of this novel. It was published in the 80s, I believe. Yeah, it was published in 1989, so it's quite popular, quite notorious. I had heard a lot about it, but I guess I never paid much attention, or like nothing really stuck with me about what had been said about it. Like I was just familiar with the title and the concept of it as a novel. So I guess my expectations for it were like that it was going to be a traditional like family generational saga, maybe with some romance in there, definitely drama, but like overall heartwarming and empowering and uplifting. Because I feel like a lot of the novels that I read that are like in this vein of like Latin American families, a lot of them are following that structure and like that mood and themes. This was Kind of that. Okay, what is like the general premise of this novel before we get into it? We're following a woman named Tita. She lives on a ranch in Mexico with her family, her 2 sisters, and her mother. I'm not quite sure what time period this is supposed to take place in, but I'm guessing it's historical fiction. Like, this was published in the 80s, but I feel like, and maybe they said it and I just forgot, but I feel like the time period that they were talking about was like well before that, like decades before that. So we're following Tita and her family. We learn pretty quickly at the beginning of the novel that Tita is in love with this man named Pedro. But Tita is the youngest in her family, the youngest woman. There are 3 sisters, she's the youngest, and as tradition goes in her family, the youngest daughter is not allowed to be married. She has to remain single for the rest of her life because her duty in the family is to take care of her mother as she ages, and just be like the primary caretaker for her mother. So we learn that she's in love with Pedro and Pedro is in love with her, but they can't be together because Tita can't be married. She has to take care of her mom. And Pedro's big genius plan is instead to marry Tita's sister Rosaura, not because he's in love with her, but just to be close to Tita. So, like, from the jump, we learned this very early on. This isn't spoilers, but from the jump, just like wild generational tradition about the youngest sibling having to be a caretaker to her mother, wild decision making from Pedro. So yeah, that kind of establishes the shenanigans that are gonna be going on in this novel. Also, the structure of it is that each chapter starts with a recipe, which was maybe my favorite part of this novel. Just really rich and nice descriptions of traditional Mexican food and how it's made. So like each chapter starts with a recipe, all the ingredients, and then the like method, the actual preparation of the dish is incorporated into the narrative, which is really cool. But it was also very confusing for me because, as you'll see, so that was chapter 1, enero, January. This is chapter 2, the second recipe, February, and on. So it's 12 chapters, 1 for each month. But once I started getting into the novel, further into the chapters, I was like, wait, each chapter is supposed to be a month-long time period following chronologically. I was like, this is a lot of stuff happening very quickly. Like, it doesn't seem like all of this could have happened in a month. Everything's moving so fast. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just like a weird, very crazy timeline. But then towards the end of the novel, you learn that no, actually, like, we're just jumping around. Like, who knows how long of a time period has passed. Like, now it's been like 20 years, but we're like, the chapters are still structured and labeled as successive months. Like, that was just so confusing and like unnecessarily so. Yeah, I don't know. I was just thrown off a lot of the times throughout this novel, and like there's some crazy stuff that happens. Like, there is magical realism in it. It's not like, I was gonna say it's not over the top, but like it is a little bit. It's not like too much, but it is sprinkled in there occasionally. But like the most wild things about the novel were some of the things that happen. Okay, I'm like trying to see if I can explain without saying any spoilers, but like I think I'm just gonna make like a little spoiler section. So light spoilers ahead. I will put a little marker and chapter timestamp for when I finish with the spoilers. Okay, I think the first thing that I can remember that I was really thrown off by after like the explanations about just like these backwards, very old school traditions and Pedro deciding to marry Rosaura, which was really dumb in my opinion. The chapter where Tita makes, what does she make? A caldo? Okay, she makes codornices en pétalos de rosa. I don't know, it's kind of like a chicken dish, a bird. She prepares this dish and it causes everyone to get like really hot. Like, they just feel like they're burning up. Specifically her sister Gertrudis, and her sister is just like, she's burning up, she can't take it, she like runs out into the field, takes off all her clothes because she's just burning up, and then she gets abducted by a man on a stallion. Like, he's just riding by on his horse, he snatches her up, mind you, she's completely naked, and then they just start going at it on the horse. Like, they're fully on the horse. Like, what is going on? So that's just one example of like crazy things that happen in this. The last chapter where they eat something once again, and then everybody just gets fucking horny. And then, okay, this is gonna be actual like major spoilers for the end. Okay, major spoiler. Skip ahead, it'll be the last spoiler. The fact that this book ends with them dying after climaxing, well, like, okay, they climax, Tita is like about to die, but then she like stops herself from going into the light, but Pedro actually dies, but then she's like, oh shit, like, I want to be with him forever, so then she commits suicide. Like, what is this book? What is this book? It was crazy. Was I thoroughly entertained? Yes. It was like, there was so much going on that I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know what was gonna happen. I kept like clutching my pearls. I was like, girl, this tea. It was like listening to some chisme from your neighbor that you're like, okay, I don't know if this is true. This sounds too crazy to be real, but like, that's tea. Everybody in this book was kind of a terrible person, except for John. John was like genuinely a sweet, nice man, and he did not deserve all the shit that happened to him, but whatever, like, he made his choices too. Yeah, everybody just sucked. The mother was just horrible. Rosaura, she was horrible too. Like, she was done dirty, but like, she was also not great. The like weird fat phobic stuff in this, like, I'm not surprised by it, but it was like just kind of unpleasant to read about. There's some questionable stuff in terms of like consent in some of like the romantic encounters, and yeah, just overall like questionable morals of everybody, questionable decision making. I did not enjoy the characters. I didn't enjoy their arcs, but I was entertained. This was crazy. And I enjoyed the writing. Not so much like the structure of it. Like I said, the chapters were unnecessarily confusing, but like the writing itself, I did enjoy. Like the food descriptions were lovely. And it was very easy to read in Spanish. So yeah, I don't know, conflicting emotions, conflicting thoughts about this one, but just for like the entertainment value alone, I gave it 3 stars. And I think I'm gonna watch the adaptation. There's multiple adaptations of it, I think. I'm probably gonna watch the most recent one. Maybe bring y'all along and tell you my thoughts on that. So yeah, these are the 2 physical books that I've read so far this month, and we'll talk about audiobooks at a later time because this was a lot and I'm tired. But yeah, 2 books in Spanish. Happy Latino Heritage Month. My Mexican authors, love them. Very entertaining reads, to say the least. Okay, so I started the adaptation series for like Water for Chocolate, and this is the HBO 2024 adaptation, and it's a show. It's 6 episodes, and I just watched the first one, and I have some thoughts. First of all, beautifully shot, like cinematography exquisite. The shots of Mexico, the shots of the time period, and of the food and the house and the ranch. It's all so beautiful. I'm really liking it. It is true to the novel, and I just found out, or right now looking at the credits, it says based on like Water for Chocolate and Los Diarios de Tita, Tita's Diaries. So I guess Laura Esquivel published, okay, Peanut. She published this like secondary, like accompanying novel that has more lore and backstory. So I was gonna say like they're really expanding in the show because there's like this whole thing about, okay, so I don't know how I missed it in the novel, or like I didn't miss it, but like I didn't really put 2 and 2 together that this is like during the Mexican Revolution, like the reign of Porfirio Diaz and his dictatorship. And apparently Pedro's like a revolutionary. He's, you know, with the Maderistas, which were like the rebels of the time, which I don't think they talked about that at all in the novel. But I do know that like Gertrudis eventually becomes a commandant in the military and stuff. So I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, this is during the Revolutionary War. So yeah, they're really expanding. I don't know, I'm just liking it a lot more than the novel. Salma Hayek is an executive producer. But yeah, I'm really into it. I think I'm gonna enjoy the show more than the book, just because it's like expanding it more. It's making some of the characters a little more, like have more depth so far, especially Tita. Like in the book, she was just like very bland and passive, and in the show so far, she has a lot more character and personality. Another thing, I like the acting. I like that it's in Spanish, but first of all, like when in English there's like a period piece, the English accent and dialect changes so much with time. Like even if you go back to like the 20s, there's a different manner of speaking. Like you can tell that it was like a different time period, that it was in the past. In Mexico, I'm surprised that that's not the case. And is it just because of the show and the actors, or is that just actually the case? Like Mexican Spanish just hasn't changed that much. Cause like I swear these actors, they just sound like I went to Coahuila right now and like I'm talking to some dude, you know? They're like, Tita, te escribí todos los días. Like, that's just some guy, you know? Right. Also, like, they do have a little bit of, like, Mexican Instagram face. I kind of don't believe that they're people who existed in the 1910s, but, you know, you can't win them all. But yeah, really enjoying it so far. I'm icing my knee. I got Peanut laying on me. It's a good evening. There's some more stuff over here. Should we go up this hole? I don't know if this hole is a good idea, but fuck it. Oh yeah, this is good. Mushy. I think it's fine if it's not veiny. It's not called a bulge. Oh my god, I feel like I'm gonna pass out. I'm dead. Oh my god, I have like a sliver of, so wake up! Wake up. Are you hungry at all? Yeah, somehow we're like not safe. Oh, okay, we're safe here. Oh my god! Wow. It's a flare. Yeah! What if I fall? Me and all my friends. I know this is like incredibly backlit, but I just like sitting here, so it is what it is. I promised y'all a chat about audiobooks that I have listened to in September. There's 2 that I've finished so far this month, and I'll start off with Finale by Stephanie Garber. This is the 3rd book in the Caraval trilogy, which is Stephanie Garber's young adult high fantasy series. I think I've talked about both Caraval and what's the second one called? I don't even know. I don't remember. And I can't be bothered to look it up. I've talked about books 1 and 2 in previous recap videos, so like I think, you know, I don't need to go into detail about those. They're silly. They're unserious. They're fun for what they are. I think I went into the series kind of expecting a little more. And then I quickly realized like, oh, this is just going to be a little bit of a goofy, nonsensical time. So then I went into this 3rd book Finale with that expectation of like, it's not going to make a lot of sense. It's going to be silly. The characters are going to make questionable decisions and just drive me a little crazy. It is what it is. So I went into it with that mindset, and I think that was the key for me just like having a good time, because I had a surprisingly good time with this 3rd book. The premise of this world is magic exists. There are some people who are immortal and possess magical powers, and our 2 protagonists are Tella and Scarlet. They're sisters. They each have a respective romantic interest, but are also kind of caught up in like these love triangles and their love interests. Throughout the series, we kind of learn things about them, how powerful they are, and how important to the world of Caraval they really are. So it's just kind of one of those series. It's a YA romance novel, but this one felt a little ramped up as far as like the romance and like there was no spice. Obviously it's a YA novel. These characters are teenagers, but it did feel more intense than like books 1 and 2. I believe this book Finale was published in 2019. So I was kind of comparing it to like, okay, when was this published versus when the ACOTAR series was published, because they're very different. Obviously, ACOTAR is like an adult fantasy novel. There's a lot of spice, there's a lot of smut. But like Dante, one of the love interests in this book, was giving me like early version of like a Shadow Daddy kind of vibe. I was like, oh, Stephanie Garber kind of wrote the blueprint. So yeah, it was like the YA version of that kind of dynamic. Just like a dark, brooding, sexy character, which, it is what it is. I can enjoy it if I just let myself enjoy it. So that's what I did for this book, and I ended up liking it. I also enjoyed that, like, it was the third book, so the concept of, like, the game of Caraval, which was what books 1 and 2 were structured around, wasn't there anymore. Like, we weren't really in the game anymore, quote unquote, which, like, it won't make any sense out of context, but, like, honestly, in context, in the books, it made zero sense to me anyway. So I was like, I'm glad we don't have that concept anymore, and it's just like a free-for-all, like, basically any magic is possible. People can die and come back to life. Like, it's whatever. None of it really matters. Like, Stephanie Garber just uses, like, whatever narrative device fits her story the best. And, like, I just accepting it and, like, knowing that anything could happen was very freeing and really let me just, like, enjoy the ride for what it was. I do feel like her writing was, like, a little bit more refined by this point in the series. And the reason that I started reading the series to begin with was because a couple years ago, I added A Curse of a Broken Heart. Is that what it's called? Her second series to my TBR based on, I don't know, a random recommendation or something. And then I realized that it was kind of in the world of Caraval. It's a separate series, but it's kind of like a continuation of the world, and the characters from Caraval are referenced in that series. So I was like, the completionist in me, the purist in me was like, I should read the original trilogy first. Which, I don't know, I don't regret, but I don't know if I completely recommend. I mean, I have to read the next series now in order to, like, fully decide if it was worth it to read the first one or not. But that's the reason that I started reading the Caraval series to begin with. So now I'm, like, free to read the rest of her books, and now I'm like, do I even want to? But I think I will, because I just started enjoying the books more as the series went on. So now I'm like, maybe the trend will continue and I'll just keep enjoying Stephanie Garber's writing more and more. And she's coming out with an adult fantasy novel soon. I think it's her first adult novel. So that could be interesting. I might check that one out. But yeah, I'm officially done with Caraval. Thank God. But, by the end of it, I had a good time. I can say I don't regret reading the series. Would I go back and tell myself, like, you should definitely start this series right now? I don't know. But it was a good time for what it was. The second audiobook that I finished this month is Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is a sci-fi novel. Last year I read Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I had already seen the film many years ago and really enjoyed it, so I kind of knew what the premise of Never Let Me Go was. But I really enjoyed that book and the writing style. And just like Kazuo Ishiguro's way of writing things and reflecting on things like humanity and the ethics around, like, medical scientific improvements. And that tone and style and themes really carried over to Klara and the Sun. It's a very, like, slow-paced and reflective style of writing. At the beginning, the first, like, third of the book, maybe up to, like, halfway through the book, I was, like, feeling like it was a little slow, and, like, Kazuo Ishiguro just gives a lot of detail that feels very mundane. But by the end of it, I was like, I feel like we actually needed all of that. We needed all the details that he included. They all somehow ended up tying back into the story and the narrative. So yeah, I ended up really appreciating it, even though it did feel a little bit slow at times. But the premise of this is that we are in our protagonist Clara's head, her POV, and she is an artificial friend, an AF. So she's basically like an AI robot, And the purpose of these artificial friends is to be companions to children. So the first third of the novel is Klara being at the shop. She's for sale at a store, and we explore the day-to-day of being an AF that's for sale. And she's very observant. She's always taking in the world around her. And that's basically her duty, is just to learn as much as she can. Once she eventually she gets adopted, or she gets bought to be somebody's companion, that continues to be her goal. Basically learn everything about this child that she's been assigned to accompany, and just help in any way she can. That is the introductory portion of the novel. After this, I will talk about it briefly, some of the things that happen after, but it will get a little bit spoilery if you want to know absolutely nothing about what comes next in the novel. So as usual, I'll just put a little spoiler text warning, and then I'll come back once I'm done with that. But Klara, she does end up getting bought by a family to accompany this child named Josie. And Josie, we learn that she is sick. We don't get a lot of details at first about what this sickness is that she has. Actually, we never get many details. We start slowly learning bits and pieces, but it's pretty ambiguous even towards the end. But we learn that Josie is sick. And there's also an aspect of this world that Kazuo Ishiguro built in this novel where people can get genetic modifications to enhance things about themselves. We don't really learn what exactly they're enhancing with these modifications, but basically they're benefits. I think they allude to making you stronger and smarter, but they come with the risk of illness, a very vague illness. But basically that's what Josie has. And I think that's all I'll say. There's more reveals and things that we learn along the way, but yeah, that's not so spoilery premise, which I just wanted to touch on because I feel yes, one of the concepts that Ishiguro is posing with this novel, one of the questions that he's posing, Peanut, is about artificial intelligence. At what point does sentient life begin? Can you replace humans with artificial intelligence? Is artificial intelligence life the same, just as valuable as a human's? Those typical questions that you see in an AI narrative, in an AI movie or story, which is fine. It's interesting to explore, but at this point in society, I'm just kind of over AI. And I know this is a very different type of AI than what we see in today's society with chat GPT and stuff like that. It's very different, but I'm just I don't know, maybe burnt out on the question of AI. And I'm just we don't need it, the answer to me is very clearly no. An AI life could never be equal to a human life. So I feel that was the less interesting question posed in the novel, but the one that it concentrated the most on, especially because the entire time we're in Klara's POV. But I feel the more interesting question was this topic of genetic enhancements, and it was interesting to see the societal implications of it, and just how differently people were treated who had these genetic modifications done versus people who hadn't. And there was a question of class and privilege and access to these kinds of procedures that I feel would have been more interesting to explore, but we kind of get a very surface level exploration of it because we're more concentrated on the AI aspect of it all. So I feel that was just one thing that I wish was a little different in the novel. I feel I enjoyed this novel. I appreciated it, but I didn't like it as much as Never Let Me Go. Never Let Me Go, I feel was more compelling because there was such a human aspect to it. The human relationships were really the core of that novel. And there was some of that in here, but because we're in Klara's POV the entire time, I just felt a little disconnected from that. And yeah, I didn't feel like whenever those beats maybe should have happened and we should have like felt emotionally connected to like Klara's experiences, it just took me out of it because I just kept remembering that she was a robot. So yeah, interesting, like pondering questions that Ishiguro posed still, but just not as interesting to me as Never Let Me Go. So yeah, those are the 2 audiobooks that I've read this month so far. Right now, my current reads are really doing it for me. I'm really having a good time with them. My current audiobook listen is called Lightning in Our Hands by Raquel Vasquez Gilliland, and it's a sequel to Witch of Wild Things, which I read a few years back and really loved. It's a romance, but it's like a fantasy-ish romance. It's not like high fantasy, it's more like urban fantasy, magical realism, but it's very cute. I'm having a great time. It has Latino representation. This one has like bipolar representation. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about mental health, and somehow I ended up in another fake marriage plot in a romance novel, but this one is doing it a lot more successfully for me than the last one I read. So I'm not as bothered by it in this one, but it's a dumb trope, but I'll allow it because the rest of the novel is really doing it for me. My physical book that I'm reading is The Bewitching by Silvia Mono Garcia. I've read so much SMG in the past years, but especially this year. I feel like this is my 3rd one this year, and I am loving it. It is such a good vibe. It's like gothic and witchy, but it takes place in the 90s and in the 30s and in the early 1900s. It's got everything. And yeah, it's just perfect for like this fall vibe that I'm feeling. I'm really loving it so far. I'm only like, I think I'm less than a third in, but I'm having a good time with it. So yeah, I'll catch y'all up once I'm a little bit more through these stories and once I have some more updates from the week. Oh, I'm tired. It is currently 85 degrees outside, and I can definitively say that this is the perfect hammock weather. Just absolute perfection.
If that one cereal was like cookies and not cereal, this is it.
Yeah. Dude, the first time I tried that, I was like,